Elizabeth Warren is getting nowhere near the coverage and support that I think that she honestly deserves in this Democratic primary, considering her position as a senator, her record on a number of different economic issues, her willingness to, since before she was in elected office, take on Wall Street. She has pretty much been languishing at the same level of support throughout the months of this primary. And it is bizarre to me because she has put out, I would say, the most detailed progressive policy proposals across the widest range of issues out of anybody running, even people that I support more than I support Elizabeth Warren. And I want to give you an example of that. This came out, I believe, yesterday morning. It's her plan for public lands, and it really incorporates a lot of the different, seemingly unrelated strands of the political philosophy of Elizabeth Warren, both her concern for climate change and the environment, but also her willingness to take on the rich and powerful corporations and all of that. So she put up a Medium post, and I want to read a few excerpts from. She said, "On my first day as president, I will sign an executive order that says no more drilling, a total moratorium on all new fossil fuel leases, including for drilling offshore and on public lands." That would be huge. Not only does it go farther than Barack Obama was willing to go, although he did ban drilling on in a large percentage of the offshore potential sites around the U.S., she would also do it for all fossil fuels, so we're talking coal, natural gas, oil as well, on public lands. Now, we have gone, obviously, in the exact wrong direction on these very issues over the past couple of years, and she is willing to sort of take back some of the ground that was lost. She goes on to say, "I'd also reinstate the methane pollution rule to limit existing oil and gas projects from releasing harmful gases that poison our air, and reinstate the clean water rule to protect our lakes, rivers, and streams and the drinking water they provide." The methane pollution rule is one of the worst environmental regulation changes that happened so far under Donald Trump. Methane, as we've said many times, is many, many times worse per bit than carbon for its effect in warming Earth. Something like 89 times worth, depending on who you talk to. And so she would reinstate that methane pollution rule that was originally set up under President Barack Obama, as well as some of the other, the Clean Water, Clean Air Acts that Donald Trump also got rid of. But she goes further than that. And I want to get into the area where she explicitly is going to help us in our fight against climate change. She says, "I will set a goal of providing 10% of our overall electricity generation from renewable sources offshore or on public lands. That's nearly 10 times what we are currently generating." And in her Medium post, she goes through sort of the last decade and a half or so of renewable energy generation on public lands. And it was not that long ago that there was effectively nothing. And now we see that we not only have more opportunity, but we have more financial incentive to do this, where the cost of generating both solar and wind energy is continually dropping. We have huge areas in the U.S. that are currently either not being used or being used for mining, drilling, things like that, that could much more profitably be used in generating renewable energy, and she would help to increase that. Now, don't get that mixed up with overall what percentage of our electricity should be generated by renewable energy. She's not saying that. She's saying what is on public lands. And I think that this is a much better use of those lands than what we've seen under Donald Trump. And remember, Donald Trump not only wants to exploit those lands, but he also removed protections from huge areas that were protected specifically from this sort of resource development, and she would also reverse that. She says, "As president, I will use my authorities under the Antiquities Act to restore protections to both Bears Ears and Grand Staircase Escalante monuments and any other national monuments targeted by this administration." So there's a little bit more, and we're going to get to it. She's got some quotes where she talks about the environment that I think are really important, but this shouldn't be necessary, of course. I love what she's saying. I love every bit of this, and you should totally go and look at her plan for public lands, which is available online on Medium. But most of this is just reversing the damage that was done by Donald Trump in this area. Or I should say, reversing the changes. You can't actually reverse the damage. The areas that have been destroyed and developed during his administration will remain that way. Native lands that have been desecrated can't be undesecrated no matter what Elizabeth Warren does. But she can change some of the rules back. And I worry that a lot of the effort of whatever future president we get, hopefully a progressive, will be put, hopefully, into moving us in the direction we need to go, but a lot of that is going to be backtracking from the last few years, having to spend political capital and time and news cycles simply reversing the huge amount of damage that Donald Trump was able to do during his first term. And again, that's a reminder that we cannot afford to hand over the presidency to someone like Donald Trump in the future, so just bear that in mind. But I also want to give Elizabeth Warren a little bit of time for how she is selling this plan. She says, the Trump administration is busy selling off our public lands to the oil, gas, and coal industries for pennies on the dollar, threatening the health and safety of our local communities and pouring an accelerant on our climate crisis. We must not allow corporations to pillage our public lands and leave taxpayers to clean up the mess. All of us, local communities and tribes, hunters and anglers, ranchers and weekend backpackers, must work together to manage and protect our shared heritage. And so there's a lot more to this plan, several important components that we just don't have time to discuss. So again, you should go and read it. But this is just such a great example of the way she approaches these sorts of issues. She does an amazing job of grounding the solution in her progressive values, but incorporating, obviously, philosophical and policy contributions from a wide array of different groups, like she cites right there. And that is why it is a very all-encompassing plan. It's not just, hey, let's have less methane leaks from our natural gas plants. It goes much broader, much wider than that. And that overall, I would say, that's her candidacy. And that's why it's so frustrating that she's not getting more coverage. Like she did this public lands plan. We're covering it here. We're probably gonna talk about it on the main show. And that's gonna be about it. Morning Joe isn't gonna have her on to talk about methane. She's not gonna play hardball with Chris Matthews over whether we should have, greater moratoriums on fossil fuel exploitation off our coast. It's just not the way that this election works, and that's incredibly frustrating, especially when this is just the latest plan of this sort from her. So last week, ahead of a trip to New Hampshire, she announced a new corporate tax plan targeting America's wealthiest corporations. We talked about that here on the Damage Report. During a previous trip through the South, Mrs. Warren highlighted her plan to restore affordable housing, particularly in communities previously burdened by government discrimination. She's also outlined plans that would provide universal child care, impose a new annual tax on the country's wealthiest families, and break up the biggest tech companies. She's advocated getting rid of the Electoral College, removing Confederate statues, and creating a national commission to study reparations for Black Americans. And I mean, that's like in the last 4 months. Like if you go back throughout last year, there was even more. And it is frustrating the extent to which that does so little to actually move her in the polls. I'm not saying that I'm endorsing Elizabeth Warren or anything like that. I just would like to live in a country where when people put forward bold, practical solutions to the problems that our country faces, that there would be some sort of reward for that. And so far in this primary, that is not the way that has gone. Beto O'Rourke had like 8 days where he blew up, and that mainly came from his ability to scale diner counters like a mountain goat, and then he fell off. And then Buttigieg, who, look, he's an exciting guy. He is charismatic, he's charming, I got nothing against him. He's blown up too. And on what? I mean, he has his personal story, his personal characteristics, all the personal stuff about a candidate. And what are his plans? Like, yes, he's in favor of some things. That's great. Now let's see some details. Let's see how you would actually lead on those issues. I want people to rise and fall based on what they would actually do, not just how they wow people for one news cycle. So the primary is still just getting started. Maybe we'll move into that area. I'm worried that we will not. Thank you very much for watching this clip from the Damage Report. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and ring the bell on YouTube to get notifications of our new videos. And of course, you can catch the full Damage Report live every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on TYT Network on YouTube TV.